Hi, if you like the video, please remember to subscribe. Hi everybody, today I'd like to talk about and do a quick beginner's guide to the Canon EF 40mm f2.8 STM Pancake lens, which I've had for just over a year now actually, so I thought it's kind of long enough for me to kind of give a bit of advice about the lens. I've used it an awful lot, and this video could be useful to anybody who's got the lens and maybe want to get a little bit more out of it, or maybe if you're thinking about buying one of these great little pancake lenses, again to kind of manage your expectations and get you excited about the lens as well. What I'm going to do is we're going to take a closer look at the lens. I'll give you some tips on using the lens. We'll have a quick look at how much you should expect to pay, and at the end of the video, after I've done my conclusion, there'll be plenty of examples for you to look at as well. So, first up, you'll see that the 40mm f2.8 is an incredibly small lens, and it's really light as well. And kind of it's rightly referred to by Canon as a travel pancake lens, because this little piece of glass makes your camera really lighter and smaller and a lot more unobtrusive than it is when it's got a big fat kit zoom on. Now, there's no IS, there's no image stabilization on this lens, so you've got to rely on slightly faster shutter speeds to keep everything sharp, but that lovely f2.8 maximum aperture means that this lens is probably twice as fast as your kit zoom, and with your gear being lighter anyway, you'll be able to handhold at longer shutter speeds than you would with a heavy piece of glass on the front of your camera. If we have a closer look at it, you can see, well, there isn't actually that much to see on the camera. There's a little AF/MF autofocus manual focus selector, and then we've got our focusing ring on the top. Now, there's no direct attachment between the focusing ring and the lens elements inside the lens. Everything's done electronically, so as you turn the manual focus ring, the motors, the autofocus motors, clunk in. So, as I'm turning this now, nothing will be happening to the elements inside. It's only when it's on the camera that it works. As you can see, on the back we've got a nice metal mount. And the STM focusing system, the idea behind it is that it's very quiet to focus, which is an advantage when you're out and about taking photographs, obviously, anyway, but especially if you're taking video. And with the later Canon DSLRs, they can now autofocus during video, and it does it, very quietly. Especially if you've ever tried to record video with a non-STM lens on it, and if you do a bit of autofocus during the video, you get that zzz, zzz, zzz noise as it hunts to try and get focus. Now, the lens's closest focusing distance is about 300mm or 12 inches, which is pretty good. You can get nice detail shots, and my experience, it focuses plenty quick enough as well. I don't have any pro lenses, so I can't compare it to L glass, but compared to my kit lenses, it's fine. It has a 52mm filter diameter if you want to put a UV filter on there, or a polarizer or something. As I said, you've got the metal mount on the back. Now, remember, this is an EF mount, which means that it's going to fit all Canon DSLRs. But what's quite important is it will fit full frame DSLRs. If you've got a crop sensor body like me, like 600D T3i, or any of the consumer level Canon DSLRs, your kit lens and maybe your telephoto kit lens is an EFS mount, which means that it only fits and will only work on those consumer bodies. If you were to move up to something like 5D Mark III or 1DX or something like that, if you had the cash, the lenses wouldn't fit onto it and they wouldn't work. But this, being an EF mount, would. So if you're planning on progressing through Canon's range of cameras to the professional stuff, then this lens will see you through that way, unlike, unfortunately, the kit lens that came with your camera. So overall impression, this is a well-built, compact lens that shouts quality above and beyond what you'd expect for its price. So let's have some tips about using the lens. So I've put the 40mm f2.8 onto my old Canon 350D. Unfortunately, the batteries won't charge up for 350D, so I've had to put the battery grip on the bottom so I can put some AA batteries into it, because I wanted to try and demo the sound or lack of sound of the focusing. So let's just turn this on. Now my mic's here, so I'm just going to lean forward a bit, and then we're going to have a go at focusing. See if you can hear anything. You should hear like a little zzz and then a beep as it gets focused. And in fact, what I'll do as well is if I take a shot afterwards, you can compare the sound of the focusing with the shutter firing. Maybe you heard something, but as you can see and hear, it's a very quiet lens. It makes the camera's form factor incredibly small and light. Well, it would be light if it didn't have this battery grip on the bottom. And I think the Canon 40mm is a really interesting lens to shoot with. To start off with, it's a prime lens, so it's not a zoom. You know, you can't zoom in or out. To physically recompose your shot, you've got to get in closer or you've got to get further away. You've got to move around, which often means that you can see different possibilities as you are doing that, rather than just looking through the viewfinder and twiddling with that zoom lens. It's quiet, so it's not distracting to your subjects, which is always a good thing. But above all, I think the 40mm is a great lens to actually improve your photography. Now, you're probably thinking, wait a minute, Rob, what are you talking about? How can you improve your photography with a particular focal length? What's that got to do with anything? Well, what it is, although this is a 40mm lens, and if you're used to sort of film cameras, you might think that, 50mm is normally referred to as the standard focal length. However, if you're using a crop sensor body like this 350D or a 600D T3i, a 7D Mark II, 700D, all that sort of thing, the actual sensor inside your camera isn't as big as a 35mm piece of film or a full frame camera like a 5D Mark III or a 1DX or something like that. So what it means is that the lens has an effective crop factor. It's got some zoom built in already. So instead of behaving like a 40mm lens would on a 35mm film camera, which means it would be slightly wide, it's actually slightly telephoto. And you actually times it, I think on Canon bodies you times it by 1.6. So it's more like a kind of a 60mm lens, which is slightly telephoto. And what that forces you to do is when you're standing in front of a scene, if you can't get far enough back, because you can't fit everything in, because you can't take that postcard shot that we're all guilty of taking when we see something, because we can just whack our zoom lens round to 18mm, you've got to choose the interesting part of that scene and just take a picture of that. Sure, I mean, you could put the camera on its side and do a panorama, but who's got the time to do that every time? And so it makes you think as a photographer about your subject and what is it you're actually taking photographs of. It's forcing you to get closer, and we know that one of the great maxims of photography is if your photos aren't good enough, you're not close enough, from the great Robert Capa. So I really like that, and I found when I go out with the 40mm, I tend to end up with more keepers because it's forcing me to fill the frame. It's forcing me to get closer and really distill what it is I'm trying to take a photograph and concentrate on that. It's got an f2.8 maximum aperture, so that's really good. I went to the Royal Marines Museum recently, and this, even inside, I got the odd. Okay, a lot of them were a little bit blurred, but because I could shoot at f2.8. At a fairly high ISO, I could get shots that I couldn't get with a slower lens. But even when you're outside, when you can go to 5.6 and f8, you're going to get even more sharpness out of the lens. But just remember, because there's no image stabilization, you have got to watch out when you do start getting to the slower shutter speeds. Round about the 50th of a second and lower, you could start getting some camera shake. And obviously, if you're taking photographs of moving objects, people, cars, or anything like that, at that sort of shutter speed, you're going to get subject blur anyway. As I said before, I really like putting this one lens on my camera and then going out on a photo, or going out on a one lens challenge, if you like. because it keeps you sharp. As I said, it forces you to look at a particular scene and choose the most interesting bits of it. Aside from using it as a still lens, for sort of general photography, I think it's not a true macro lens, but you can get pretty close, and it takes nice sharp shots like that. But this is also my main video lens. Almost every single video, if you watch my videos on YouTube, where it's this kind of layout with those two lights on behind me, they'll have been taken with a 40mm. Because although I do have a big bright light there, halogen light there, and we do have the room lights on as well, it's still pretty dark in here. And I have to use I think my aperture I tend to run at, I think it's f3.3 I run it at, about ISO 400, and that gives me this, I think, quite a nice framing for my subject, and it's nice and sharp, much better than the kit lens which I'm filming this with. But I guess, if it looks okay, it looks all right like that. And the big advantage, if you've got one of the newer Canon bodies, like I think it's the 650D, 700D, is that they're compatible with the STM lens for silent focusing, auto-focusing while you're taking a video, where with the earlier ones you can still focus while you're doing video, but in not quite the same way. So there we go, a few tips about how to use the Pancake lens, how to get the most of it. For me, it's really stick it on your camera, go out and take lots of photos, not in the situations where you normally would, and you'll be amazed at the sort of more the higher percentage of keepers you'll get. So let's look at what you could expect to pay for a Canon EF 40mm 2.8 Pancake lens. Here we are over on Amazon.co.uk, and the lens is currently going for £126.55. Again, I would keep this on your watch list or your wish list, and just keep an eye on the price as it goes up and down. I was lucky enough to get my 40mm free with my 600D when I bought it a couple of Christmases ago, and watch out for cashback deals and that sort of thing too. If we compare it with the 50mm, that's not the 50mm, that's the 50mm, that's going for about £74. So, you're paying, another 50 odd quid for the 40mm. But in the conclusion, I'll discuss why probably you should consider the 40mm over the Canon 50mm f1.8. Let's go to Amazon.com. The 40mm is currently going for $199. Seems like a fair price, but again, watch out for cashback deals, bundle deals, that sort of thing. Excuse me. And let's compare that with the 50mm 1.8, $125. So, these are Canon's cheapest lenses, cheapest prime lenses. But again, I would suggest, if you've got a Christmas coming up, if you're watching the video around about then, or you've got a birthday, seriously consider the 40mm 2.8. So the 40mm f2.8 is a great buy. It's a can you call something that's over £100 a bargain? I don't know. Depends what your budget is, doesn't it? But hopefully I've showed in this video, in the way that you can use the lens, that it's a really useful tool to make your photos better. And I think I would probably recommend the 40mm 2.8 over the cheap nifty 50, the Canon 50mm f1.8. But the 50 is just a little bit too long on a crop sensor body. It really does make you concentrate on the subject, but maybe a little bit too much. The 40mm just being that tiny little bit wider gives you that little bit more latitude, but still enables you to really distill the scene in front of you and get that image that caught your eye in the first place that you want to record. And I think the 40 really is perfect for that, for just kind of pushing in to the scene. And I think, the way to use it is, whack it on the front of your camera. Try and get away from the fear of always having to have a zoom lens. Get the prime on. And I guarantee if you go out with this little lens on your camera, on your normal photo walks, or in new sort of situations, you will get more keepers, because, as I said before, it'll forces you to just select the most interesting part from an image and record that, rather than the postcard images, which, although can be pretty, everybody's kind of done them, haven't they? Okay, so that's enough from me. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up. I'd really like it if you could subscribe. That means an awful lot. You can put comments down below. Email me scalespeed@gmail.com, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.